Receive reaction following the President's address and announcement of the national state of disaster that has been instituted. I'm now joined by IFP National Spokesperson Mkhuleko Hlengwa and DA Member of Parliament Cyril Ramaphosa. Gentlemen, a very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Hlengwa, maybe to start off with you, your reaction to the President's address and some of the work that he suggested is going to be carried out immediately in order to address the challenges that KZN is facing.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you and the viewers. I think at the outset, of course, one would want to really again convey condolences to the bereaved families. The extent of the damage and the extent of the loss of life is not anything that can be quantified, particularly for families who continue to be in distress and in a very desperate situation. The survivors, of course, and those affected by it continue to bear the brutal brunt of a very slow response, and that is of serious concern to us. And so we take what the President says with a pinch of salt, but with a hope and optimism that the situation will gain traction insofar as the response that is required being rolled out. There is a need for urgency, particularly for communities who continue to live now in community halls with an absence of the necessary basic human infrastructure, really, to make it at the very least bearable for them. And so we really are calling for urgency in this regard. And of course, the declaration of the national state of disaster enables the pooling and sharing of resources at a greater scale, but there too, for so long as it's just in words and not in deeds, it's actually meaningless. So we hope that, and are calling for an urgent mobilization of added resources and the necessary infrastructure to be able to meet the demands which are on the ground right now. And the final point is that we are calling for discipline, maximum discipline, for all the public representatives and officials who are going to be involved and are involved in all these processes and operations to be able to perform their duties, consistent with the law and the public expectation that is there. Our people, are complaining, correctly so, about particularly the absence of councillors and or the behavior of councillors. If you look at what is happening in Durban South, where councillors are pulling out guns and, are not conducting themselves in a manner that is fitting the office of public service. And now communities living in fear, and the service providers and the operators of the services that are being, offered in certain areas are actually quite concerned about all these things. But all in all, obviously, the taste of the pudding is in the eating, and what the President has said will be tested by the political will which we expect, because we recognize that there's a public trust deficit between the public and government. And so everything that is being said, whilst it strikes the right tones, the skepticism that lingers is warranted, because hindsight is the best sight, and COVID-19 corruption, really is something we can't overlook. And therefore our worst fears come to life when, once again, resources are being made available for this kind of crisis.
Mr. Brink.